Fix this $5 million car, and I'll marry you.
The launch of the revolutionary Apex X was just 2 hours away, but the $5 million hypercar sat dead in the center of the lab. Isabella Stone, the ruthless billionaire CEO, watched her stock price plummet in real time while her team of Ivy League engineers stood frozen in terror. Needing a target for her rage, Isabella's eyes landed on Marcus, the fleet detailer, who was quietly polishing a fender in the corner. She stalked over, grabbed his grease-stained hand, and held it up for the cameras and investors to see. "Look at this," she sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "The car washer thinks he's an engineer." Then, to humiliate him completely, she made a proposal that silenced the room. "Tell you what," she mocked, leaning in close. "If you can fix this car in the next 10 minutes, I won't just promote you. I'll marry you, right here. I'll make you the king of this company." The room erupted in cruel laughter. She thought it was the perfect joke. She thought he would crumble. But she didn't know that the car washer was the only person in the room who could hear the car screaming, and she definitely didn't expect that, when he did fix it, he would deliver a rejection so brutal it would break the internet.
Welcome to Black Lives Story, where we tell the stories that deserve to be heard. You are not going to want to miss the look on her face at the end of this one. If you believe in justice, help us spread this story by taking 1 second to like, subscribe, and share this video. It's the best way to support our channel. Now, let's start the engine.
The silence inside the aerodynamics design laboratory was not peaceful. It was the vacuum of a tomb. In the center of the pristine surgical white room sat the Apex X. It was less a car and more a violent thought trapped in carbon fiber and liquid silver paint. Low, wide, and aggressive, it looked like it was doing 200 miles an hour while standing still. It was a $5 million promise. It was supposed to be the apex of human engineering, a revolutionary hybrid beast marrying the instant torque of electric propulsion with the raw, combustible violence of hydrogen. It was designed to be the fastest vehicle on Earth. But right now, it was just a very expensive paperweight. "Try it again," Isabella Stone whispered. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried a frequency that made the hairs on the back of necks stand up. The lead engineer, a man named Julian with a PhD from MIT and a sweat stain rapidly expanding through his dress shirt, tapped a command into his tablet. Initiating sequence 4. Hydrogen injection in 3, 2. The room held its breath. The Saudi investors, 3 men in immaculate thobes sitting on a raised viewing platform, stopped checking their Patek Philippe watches for a split second. A low hum began deep inside the machine. The electric starters engaged. Then the hydrogen injectors were supposed to fire, igniting the internal combustion element that gave the Apex X its soul. Or clunk. Then a hiss. Then nothing. The Apex X let out a sound like a dying lung. The diagnostic screens on the wall flashed a polite, sterile red. Ignition failure. System abort. The silence rushed back in, heavier than before. Isabella Stone closed her eyes. She was 32 years old, a billionaire heiress who had doubled her family's fortune by being ruthless, brilliant, and entirely intolerant of failure. She didn't just run aerodynamics, she ruled it. And today was supposed to be her coronation. The launch was in exactly 2 hours. The press was already gathering outside the hangar doors. She opened her eyes. They were the color of cold steel. "It's dead," she stated flatly. "Ms. Stone," Julian stammered, his fingers trembling over his tablet. It's a software handshake issue. The ECU isn't talking to the hydrogen pumps. We just need to reflash the kernel. Isabella moved. She didn't walk, she struck. She crossed the white epoxy floor in 3 strides, snatching the tablet from Julian's hands. She looked at the screen, seeing the same error code she had seen for the last 40 minutes. "A software handshake," she repeated, her voice rising, cracking the sterile air. "Yes, we think the crack Isabella hurled the tablet against the far wall. It shattered, sending shards of glass skittering across the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot, making the entire engineering team flinch. "I don't pay you for we think." Isabella screamed, the meltdown finally erupting. "I pay you for it works. That is a $5 million machine. I have the royal family of Saudi Arabia sitting 10 feet away, bored out of their minds, waiting to sign a check that saves this company, and you are giving me excuses about a handshake." She turned on them, a predator cornering prey. "You are the best engineers in the world. Ivy League, Stanford, MIT. I paid you millions, and you built me a paperweight. Fix it. You have 10 minutes before I start firing people alphabetically." The engineers scattered like roaches exposed to light, diving back into their laptops, shouting nonsense technobabble at each other. Desperate to look busy, desperate to look competent. In the background of this chaos, invisible to everyone, was Marcus King. Marcus was on his knees near the rear wheel of the Apex X. He held a microfiber cloth in one hand and a bottle of ceramic polish in the other. He was the fleet detailer. His job was to make things shine. He wasn't supposed to touch the engine. He wasn't supposed to speak to the engineers. He certainly wasn't supposed to look at Isabella Stone. He was a large man, broad-shouldered, with hands that were rough and scarred. Hands that knew the difference between a bolt that was tight and a bolt that was true. He wore a navy blue jumpsuit with his name stitched in a fading white thread over the pocket. To the people in this room, he was furniture. He was the guy you walked past to get to the coffee machine. But Marcus wasn't just polishing the rims. He was listening. He had been listening for weeks. He knew the Apex X better than the men who designed it because they looked at screens, but Marcus looked at the metal. He felt the car. When they ran the test cycles, he could feel the vibration in the floor through the soles of his work boots. He knew the rhythm of the machine, and he knew why it was dying. He continued to polish the carbon fiber weave of the rim, his movements rhythmic, hypnotic. Wax on, wax off. But his ears were tuned to the frantic conversation of the geniuses a few feet away. "It's the coding," Julian was arguing, sweat dripping onto his keyboard. "The timing on the injection is off by a millisecond. We need to patch the firmware." "No, it's the sensor array," another engineer countered. "It's reading a false positive on the thermal intake." Marcus stopped polishing. He shook his head slightly, a reflex he couldn't control. He looked at the rear intake vent, a massive, sculpted scoop designed to gulp air for the hydrogen combustion. He could see the faint shimmer of heat rising from it. He remembered the sound the car made right before it died, that wheezing gasp. It wasn't a computer glitch. Computers didn't gasp. Lungs gasped. The car was suffocating. "It's not the code," Marcus muttered under his breath, the words slipping out before he could stop them. He leaned in closer to the wheel well, pretending to check for a smudge, but his eyes were locked on the intake manifold visible through the mesh grille. He could see the titanium butterfly valve. It was trembling. "The intake manifold is vibrating at the wrong pitch," he whispered to the car, as if comforting a sick animal. "It's creating a vacuum lock. It's choking the hydrogen." He knew it with the certainty of gravity. The titanium was too stiff. It was resonating with the electric motor's frequency, shaking the valve shut just as the hydrogen tried to enter. It was simple physics. It was a harmonic dissonance. "What did you say?" The voice didn't come from the car. It came from above him. Marcus froze. The microfiber cloth stopped moving. The room, which had been a cacophony of panicked typing and shouting, seemed to dim. He slowly turned his head upward. Isabella Stone was standing over him. She wasn't looking at the engineers anymore. She was looking down at the top of his head, her eyes narrowing, her expression caught somewhere between confusion and the urge to lash out at the nearest available target. She had heard him. The spark had been lit. Isabella Stone's shadow fell over Marcus like a cold front. She stood motionless, staring down at the man kneeling on her pristine floor, her chest heaving slightly from the exertion of her earlier scream. The room had gone deathly silent again, but this was a different kind of silence. Before, it was the silence of failure. Now it was the silence of transgression. Marcus slowly stood up. He was tall, 6'3" in his steel-toed boots. And as he unfolded his frame, he towered over the billionaire CEO. But posture is a language, and Marcus kept his shoulders slumped, his head slightly bowed, the posture of a man who knows his place in the food chain. He clutched the dirty microfiber rag to his chest as if it were a shield. "Excuse me," Isabella said, her voice icy and quiet, cutting through the room more effectively than her shouting had. She tilted her head, looking at him as if he were a fascinating, disgusting insect that had crawled onto a dinner plate. Did the car washer just speak? Julian, the lead engineer, stepped forward, desperate to deflect the laser pointer of her rage. "Miss Stone, I'm so sorry. He's the fleet detailer. I'll have security remove him immediately. He shouldn't be in the lab during a—" "Quiet, Julian," Isabella snapped, never taking her eyes off Marcus. She took a step closer, invading Marcus's personal space. She could smell the faint chemical tang of cleaning polish and old motor oil on him. It was the smell of labor, and it offended her. "I asked you a question. You said something about the manifold. Repeat it." It was a trap. Everyone in the room knew it. She was baiting him, waiting for him to stammer an apology, so she could flay him alive for the amusement of the Saudi investors. She needed a villain for this disaster, and a clumsy janitor interrupting a $5 million test was a perfect scapegoat. Marcus looked at the engineers, who were glaring at him with a mixture of embarrassment and contempt. Then he looked at the car, the beautiful broken machine. He couldn't help himself. He respected the machine too much to let it die because of their ego. He met Isabella's steel-gray eyes. He didn't stammer. "The car is suffocating, Miss Stone," Marcus said. His voice was deep, calm, and carried a resonance that surprised the room. It wasn't the voice of a subordinate. It was the voice of an expert. "Your software is perfect. The code is doing exactly what you told it to do. But the hardware is singing the wrong note." Isabella blinked. "Singing? The intake manifold," Marcus continued, gesturing with his rag toward the engine bay. "It's titanium alloy. When the electric motor spins up to pre-ignition speed, it creates a micro-vibration. A hum. That hum is matching the resonant frequency of the titanium butterfly valve. It's shaking the valve shut right when the hydrogen tries to enter. It's a harmonic lock. You're choking the engine." For 3 seconds, the logic hung in the air. It was brilliant. It was physical. It was undeniable. Then Julian laughed. It was a nervous, scoffing sound. "Harmonic lock? That's ridiculous. We ran stress tests on the titanium. The resonance is within tolerance. This guy washes wheels, Miss Stone. He doesn't know what he's talking about." Isabella looked at Julian, then back at Marcus. She saw the grease under Marcus's fingernails. She saw the fading name patch on his jumpsuit. And then she looked up at the viewing platform. The Saudi investors were leaning forward. They weren't checking their watches anymore. They were watching her. She realized instantly that she had lost control of the narrative. The launch was a disaster. She looked incompetent. She needed a distraction. She needed a spectacle so absurd, so dramatic, that it would overshadow the failure of the car. She needed to turn this moment into a circus. Isabella laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound like glass breaking. "Oh, this is rich," she announced, turning to the room, her arms spreading wide. "Did you hear that, gentlemen? My team of PhDs says it's a coding error. But the man who polished the tires says the car is singing." She whirled back to Marcus, her face twisting into a predatory smile. She reached out and grabbed his hand. The contact was shocking. Her hand was manicured, soft, and adorned with a diamond ring worth more than Marcus would earn in 10 lifetimes. His hand was rough, scarred, and stained with black grease. She held it up high, forcing him to lift his arm, displaying the grit and grime like a trophy of his inferiority. "Listen to this, everyone," she shouted, playing to the back of the room, playing to the cameras, playing to the investors. "The car washer thinks he's an engineer. He thinks he can solve a physics problem that stumped the finest minds in America." Marcus tried to pull his hand away, but she dug her nails in. She pulled him closer until he could smell her expensive perfume, a scent that barely masked the smell of her desperation. "You think you're special, Marcus?" she hissed, her voice dripping with sarcasm, loud enough for the microphones to catch. "You think you see something we don't? Well, I'm a betting woman, and I need a miracle." She looked him dead in the eye, her smile widening into something manic. "Tell you what," she declared. "If you can fix this $5 million car, if you can make it start in the next 10 minutes, I won't just promote you." The room went deadly still. "I'll marry you," Isabella said. "Right here. Right now. I'll put this ring on your dirty finger and make you the king of aerodynamics. You'll own half of everything. You'll be royalty." A ripple of shock went through the engineers. The investors exchanged glances. It was insane. It was theatrical. It was exactly the kind of bold, unhinged behavior billionaires got famous for. Marcus stared at her. He saw the mockery in her eyes. He knew she didn't mean it. She was using him as a prop to entertain the money men. She was betting on his failure because she was absolutely certain he was nobody. "You're joking," Marcus said quietly. "I never joke about business," she lied, her voice loud and confident. Then, just as quickly as the smile had appeared, it vanished. Her face dropped into a cold, hard mask of corporate cruelty. She leaned in until her lips were inches from his ear. "But when you fail," she whispered, the venom returning. "And you will fail, Marcus. I am suing you. I will claim you tampered with the prototype. I will claim you damaged company property. I will bury you in so much litigation that your grandchildren will be born in debt. I will ban you from this industry for life. You won't even be able to wash a car in this state when I'm done with you." She released his hand, shoving it away as if it were contaminated. She stepped back, checking her gold watch. 10 minutes car washer, she announced, folding her arms. "The clock is ticking. Show us your miracle, or get ready to lose everything." The engineers snickered. The investors watched, amused. Isabella Stone stood tall, confident that she had just crushed an insect to save her show. Marcus looked at his hand, still stinging from her nails. Then he looked at the Apex X. The car was still silent, still suffocating. He didn't look at Isabella. He walked past her toward the tool chest. "I don't need 10 minutes, he said. The silence in the lab was no longer heavy. It was brittle, ready to shatter at the slightest provocation. Marcus walked to the rolling tool chest, his heavy boots echoing on the epoxy floor. He didn't rush. He didn't look like a man facing a lawsuit or a life ban from the industry. He looked like a man who had a job to do. Isabella Stone checked her watch, then looked at the camera crew she had summoned from the marketing department. "Are we rolling?" she asked, smoothing her hair. She pulled out her own phone, opening Instagram Live. "Hey everyone, we have a special bonus feature for the launch today. Our fleet washer thinks he can outsmart MIT. Watch this crash and burn." The Saudi investors murmured amongst themselves, amused by the spectacle. They were used to falcons and racehorses. Betting on human humiliation was just another sport. Marcus ignored them all. He reached into the tool chest. He didn't reach for the diagnostic tablet. He didn't reach for the laser calibrator. He picked up a simple, battered 10mm wrench. Then he walked over to the wall-mounted first aid kit, popped the latch, and removed a medical stethoscope. "A stethoscope?" Julian, the lead engineer, snorted, wiping sweat from his upper lip. "What are you going to do? Take its blood pressure? The machine is dead, man. You can't resuscitate it with a toy." "I don't need 10 minutes, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the snickering. He placed the earpieces in his ears, shutting out the sound of their mockery. The world narrowed down to two things, his hands and the metal. He walked back to the Apex X. The car sat dormant, a $5 million sculpture of failure. Marcus leaned over the engine bay, the heat from the failed ignition attempts still radiating off the block. It smelled of ozone and unburnt hydrogen. He placed the diaphragm of the stethoscope against the intake manifold. He closed his eyes. To the room, he looked ridiculous. A janitor playing doctor with a hypercar. Isabella zoomed in with her phone, narrating the absurdity to her 50,000 live viewers. Look at the focus. He really thinks the car is going to talk to him. But Marcus wasn't listening for a voice. He was listening for the echo. He took the wrench and tapped the titanium intake pipe. Clang. He moved the stethoscope 3 inches to the right. Tapped again. Clang. He moved to the butterfly valve housing, the piece of metal responsible for regulating the hydrogen flow. He tapped it. Thud buzz. His eyes snapped open. There it was. The dead note. The dissonance. To an engineer looking at a CAD file, the valve was perfect. It was machined to within a micron of tolerance. But metal in the real world didn't care about CAD files. Metal had memory. Metal had stress. Marcus leaned in closer, his face inches from the scorching hot manifold. He could see the mounting bolts. There were 4 of them, securing the valve to the block. They were titanium, drilled by robots, torqued to exact specifications. But specifications were static. Physics was dynamic. He tapped the 3rd bolt. Ping. High-pitched. Tight. He tapped the 4th bolt. Thud. Found you, Marcus whispered. The 4th bolt was over-tightened. Maybe just by a millimeter. Maybe just a single rotation too many by an overzealous robotic arm. But that extra tension was warping the valve housing just enough, microscopically enough, to change its resonant frequency. When the electric motor spun up, it created a vibration that traveled through the chassis. That vibration hit this specific over-tightened bolt, amplified, and shook the valve shut. It wasn't a software error. It was a guitar string tuned too high, snapping the neck of the instrument. 2 minutes. Isabella called out, checking her viewer count. Don't worry, folks, security is on standby. Marcus didn't hear her. He gripped the wrench. This was the surgical moment. If he turned it too far left, the seal would break, hydrogen would leak, and the car would explode the moment they hit ignition. If he didn't turn it enough, the harmonic lock would remain, and he would be destroyed. He needed perfect pitch. He fit the wrench over the bolt head. The metal was hot. He took a breath, steadying his hands that had polished rims for 3 years, hands that had rebuilt engines in his driveway since he was 12. He felt the tension in the bolt. He visualized the titanium threads biting into the block. He applied pressure. Not force. Pressure. He turned it to the left. 1/4 of a turn. No more. No less. Click. The sound was tiny, microscopic, lost in the cavernous room. But Marcus felt it travel up the wrench and into his arm. It was the sound of the metal relaxing. The stress fracture in the harmonic field had just been healed. The valve sighed into its natural seat. Marcus pulled the wrench away. He pulled the stethoscope from his ears and hung it around his neck. He grabbed his dirty rag and wiped a smudge of grease he had accidentally left on the pristine engine cover. He stood up. The clock on the wall read that only 4 minutes had passed. The room was silent, waiting for the punchline. Isabella lowered her phone, a smirk playing on her lips. Done already? Did you give it a lollipop? Marcus didn't look at her. He looked at Julian, the lead engineer who was hovering by the control console, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else on Earth. Start it, Marcus said. Julian blinked. He looked at Isabella for permission. Do it, Isabella said, her voice dripping with anticipation. Let's end this charade. Press the button, Julian. Let's hear the silence. Julian swallowed hard. He tapped the screen. Initiating sequence again. Hydrogen injection in 3, 2. Marcus crossed his arms. He didn't look at the car. He looked at the floor, feeling for the vibration. The electric motor's whirred. A high-pitched whine filled the room. Then the hydrogen injectors fired. Usually this was the moment the system aborted. The moment the gasp happened. Instead, there was a sound like a tear in the fabric of the atmosphere. Crack whoosh. The Apex X didn't just start. It detonated into life. A roar, primal, terrifying, and absolutely magnificent, shook the laboratory. It wasn't the coughing sputter of a broken machine. It was the sustained, aggressive scream of a predator waking up. The sound bounced off the white walls, a physical force that hit the observers in the chest. The Saudi investors jumped to their feet, their thobes rustling, eyes wide. Julian scrambled back from the console as the telemetry screens behind him exploded with light. But it wasn't red light. It was a cascade of green. Efficiency. Julian screamed over the roar of the engine, his voice cracking. Efficiency monitors are climbing. 80%. 90%. The engine settled from a roar into a menacing rhythmic idle. It was a perfect mechanical heartbeat. There was no shudder, no vibration. The manifold sat perfectly still, the harmonic dissonance gone, allowing the hydrogen to flow like water. 100%. Julian yelled, staring at the data in disbelief. Thermal regulation is stable. Output is, my God, output is 110% of theoretical max. It's perfect. Isabella Stone dropped her phone. It hit the floor with a clatter that no one heard over the symphony of the engine. Her mouth was slightly open, her eyes fixed on the car that, 5 minutes ago, was a paperweight and was now the most powerful machine on the planet. Marcus King stood alone in the center of the room, the vibrations of the car traveling up through his boots, greeting him like an old friend. He reached out and patted the fender, a gentle, affectionate tap. "Told you," he whispered to the machine. "You just needed to breathe." The Apex X settled into a deep, throaty idle, a rhythmic thrum that vibrated in the chests of everyone in the room. It was no longer a broken collection of parts. It was alive, breathing, and terrifyingly powerful. The sound was hypnotic, washing away the tension of the last 2 hours and replacing it with a stunned, religious awe. For 10 seconds, no one moved. The engineers stared at the efficiency monitors, which were holding steady at 110%, a figure that defied their simulations. Julian, the lead engineer, looked from the screen to Marcus, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, unable to reconcile the math with the man holding the wrench. Then the silence broke. It started on the viewing platform. The lead Saudi investor, a man who had sat stone-faced through the entire disaster, slowly stood up. He didn't check his watch. He didn't look at his phone. He began to clap. It was a slow, deliberate applause that echoed off the white walls. His associates joined him, standing and nodding, murmuring mashallah, as they gestured toward the purring machine. They weren't applauding the car, they were applauding the miracle. On the floor, the energy shifted violently. The live stream, still broadcasting from Isabella's discarded phone, was undergoing a meltdown of its own. The view count, fueled by the algorithm sensing high engagement, had spiked from 50,000 to 500,000 in 3 minutes. The chat was scrolling so fast it was a blur of white text, a waterfall of digital validation. Did he just fix that with a wrench? Who is that guy? Fire the CEO, hire the janitor. Legend. Isabella Stone stood frozen near the wall. The applause from the investors hit her like a physical blow, snapping her out of her shock. She blinked, her mind rebooting. She looked at the car, the asset that had just gone from a liability to a gold mine. She looked at the wall monitors. The stock ticker for aerodynamics, which had been bleeding red all morning, had frozen. Then, as news of the successful ignition leaked out via social media, it ticked up. Then it jumped. Green numbers began to replace the red. The algorithm had noticed the sentiment shift. The market smelled success. She was saved. Isabella took a breath, and in that singular inhalation, the panic evaporated. It was replaced instantly by the cold, calculating machinery of her ambition. She looked at Marcus King. 5 minutes ago, he was a stain on her floor. He was a liability, a prop for her cruelty, a scapegoat to be sacrificed. But now, standing next to the humming engine, wiping his hands on a rag, tall and stoic and undeniably brilliant. He was the most valuable asset in the room. She saw the investors pointing at him. She saw the internet falling in love with him. Isabella Stone didn't get to be a billionaire by ignoring market trends. She realized, with the speed of a predatory cat, that she couldn't fire him. If she fired him now, she would be the villain of the century. The stock would tank. The investors would walk. But if she owned him? If she claimed him? If this whole thing, The insult, the bet, the challenge was framed not as abuse, but as a test? A brilliant, eccentric billionaire scouting for diamond-in-the-rough talent? The narrative rewrote itself in her head in milliseconds. Isabella reached down and picked up her phone. She checked her reflection in the dark screen, smoothing a stray lock of blonde hair back into place. She adjusted her blazer. And then the mask slid back into place. The vein that had been bulging in her forehead vanished. The snarl smoothed into a smile. But it wasn't the cruel, manic smile of the confrontation. It was something far more dangerous. It was warm. It was inviting. It was the smile of a spider welcoming a fly. She walked toward Marcus. She didn't stomp this time. She glided. Her hips swayed with a practiced cinematic grace. She moved through the crowd of stunned engineers, who parted for her like water. Marcus hadn't moved. He was watching the temperature gauge on the engine block, ensuring the thermal cycle was holding. He sensed her approach, but he didn't turn. "Marcus," she purred. Her voice had changed octaves. It was smoky, intimate, pitched perfectly for the microphone that was still clipped to her lapel. She stepped into his personal space, but this time, it wasn't to intimidate. It was to seduce. She reached out, her manicured hand resting gently, almost possessively, on the chest of his dirty blue jumpsuit. She didn't flinch at the grease this time. She treated the grime like it was texture, like it was rugged and authentic. She looked up at him, batting her eyelashes, playing to the camera lens that she knew was zooming in. "You," she began, breathless, shaking her head in mock amazement. "You are absolutely full of surprises." Marcus looked down at her hand on his chest, then up at her eyes. His expression remained unreadable, stone cold. "I just fixed the car, Miss Stone. Like you asked." "You didn't just fix it," she said, letting her hand slide up to his shoulder, brushing off a speck of imaginary dust. "You saved it. You saw what none of these." She waved a dismissive hand at her Ivy League team, throwing them under the bus without a second thought. "What none of these experts could see. You have the ear, Marcus. You have the gift." She turned to the camera, then back to him, making sure her profile was caught in the best light. "I told you I was a betting woman," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that echoed through the silent room. "And I pay my debts." She took a half step back, creating a tableau for the audience. The billionaire and the mechanic. Beauty and the Beast. It was marketing gold. "I made a promise in front of the world," Isabella announced, her voice ringing with theatrical sincerity. "I said if you fixed this car, I would make you the king of aerodynamics." She smiled, a dazzling 100-watt beam of charisma. "Well, a promise is a promise." She reached out and took his hand again. This time, she didn't hold it up to mock him. She held it with both of hers, cradling it, caressing the calloused knuckles. "You're brilliant, Marcus," she said, looking deep into his eyes, projecting a look of sudden, overwhelming infatuation. "You're strong. You're exactly the kind of man a company like this needs. And maybe you're exactly the kind of man I need." The room gasped. The Saudi investors exchanged wide-eyed glances. The livestream comments froze for a split second before exploding into chaos again. Isabella leaned in, closing the distance until they were almost touching. "Maybe we should get married," she said, the words hanging in the air like neon ambition. "Think about it. My capital. Your genius. We wouldn't just run this company. We'd be a power couple. We'd rule the industry. I can give you everything you've ever wanted. The suits, the cars, the respect." She squeezed his hand, her nails digging in slightly, a silent warning that this wasn't a request. It was a script, and he needed to read his lines. "I'm offering you the world, Marcus," she whispered, tilting her head, offering him the ultimate fantasy. "All you have to do is say yes." She stood there, glowing with triumph, her hand extended, waiting for the lowly car washer to fall to his knees in gratitude. She had turned a disaster into a fairy tale. She had won. The air in the laboratory seemed to crystallize. Isabella Stone stood there, her hand extended, her smile a dazzling weapon of mass seduction. She was offering Marcus King the ultimate American dream. The billionaire lifestyle, the power, the recognition. All he had to do was take her hand. The live stream chat had frozen in anticipation. The engineers held their breath. The Saudi investors watched with intense, unblinking curiosity. It was the perfect Hollywood ending. The princess and the pauper. The merger of the century. Marcus looked down at her hand. It was soft, manicured, and trembling slightly with the adrenaline of her performance. Then he looked at his own hand, stained with oil, scarred from years of honest labor, calloused from gripping tools that built the world people like Isabella merely owned. He looked at the Apex X, the magnificent machine he had just healed. It was honest. It was pure physics. It didn't lie. Then he looked at the camera lens of her phone. He saw the reflection of a man who had cleaned wheels for 3 years while holding a mind capable of revolutionizing the industry. He saw a man who had been invisible until 5 minutes ago. Slowly, deliberately, Marcus took a step back. Isabella's hand was left hanging in the empty air. Her smile faltered just a fraction. "Marcus?" she whispered, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "Did you hear me? I'm offering you." "I heard you," Marcus said. He didn't whisper. His voice was calm, deep, and projected to the very back of the room. It bounced off the white walls, stripping away the glamour of the moment. He let his hand drop to his side. "Ms. Stone," he continued, holding her gaze. 10 minutes ago, you grabbed this hand to make a joke. You laughed at me. You treated me like dirt because you thought I was nobody. You were ready to sue me, to ban me, to destroy my life for your entertainment." Isabella's smile vanished. Her eyes darted to the investors, then back to him. "Marcus, don't be dramatic. It was a test. I was testing your—" "It wasn't a test," Marcus cut her off, his voice hardening like steel. "It was a show. And now, suddenly, I'm brilliant. Now, suddenly, we should be a power couple." He shook his head slowly, a look of profound pity crossing his face. "You don't want me because you respect me, Ms. Stone. You want me because I just made you money. You want me because I saved your stock price and your reputation." The room was deadly silent. The hum of the Apex X seemed to fade into the background. Isabella's face flushed a deep, angry crimson. She hissed, low enough that she hoped the mic wouldn't catch it. "Take the deal, you idiot. I can make you rich. I can make you someone." Marcus reached into his back pocket. He didn't pull out a phone. He didn't pull out a contract. He pulled out his dirty microfiber cleaning rag. He folded it neatly once, twice. "You promised to marry me," Marcus said, addressing the room, ensuring the live stream heard every syllable. "You offered me everything. The suits. The cars. The crown." He placed the rag on the fender of the $5 million car. It was a resignation letter written in cotton and grease. "But I have standards." Marcus delivered the words with the weight of a sledgehammer. "I fix broken cars, Ms. Stone. Not broken people." The line hit the room like a physical shockwave. Isabella Stone gasped, physically recoiling as if he had slapped her. The color drained from her face, leaving her pale and exposed under the harsh laboratory lights. The engineer's jaws dropped. The livestream chat exploded so fast it became a blur of fire, 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 and RIP. She stood there, stripped of her narrative, stripped of her power, revealed for exactly what she was, a bully with a checkbook. Marcus didn't wait for a response. There was nothing left to say. He turned his back on the billionaire heiress. He turned his back on the Apex X. He began to walk toward the exit, but he didn't make it to the door. "Mr. King." The voice came from the viewing platform. It was the lead Saudi investor. He had descended the stairs and was standing in Marcus's path. He wasn't looking at Isabella. He wasn't looking at the car. He was looking at the mechanic. The investor reached into his thobe and pulled out a business card. It was heavy, black, with gold embossing. "That was impressive," the investor said, his voice thick with respect. "I have watched many engineers panic today, but I have only seen one man listen." He held out the card. "We are building a new hypercar facility in Dubai," the investor said. "We have money. We have technology. But we do not have someone who can hear the engines sing. We need a chief engineer." Marcus looked at the card. Then he looked at the investor. "The pay?" Marcus asked. "Double whatever she could offer," the investor smiled. "And no one will ever ask you to wash a tire." Marcus took the card. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. The first real smile anyone had seen in that room all day. "I start Monday," Marcus said. He shook the investor's hand, firm, confident equal. Then, Marcus King walked out of the double glass doors of aerodynamics. He stepped out of the air-conditioned nightmare and into the warm, bright sun of the afternoon, leaving his jumpsuit, his rag, and his old life behind forever. Inside the lab, the camera lingered on the final shot. Isabella Stone stood alone in the center of the vast, white room. She was standing next to her perfect $5 million car. She was rich. She was powerful. And she was completely, utterly alone. She looked at the door where the janitor had just walked out, realizing too late that she had held a diamond in her hand and thrown it away because it had a little dirt on it. On the wall monitors, the live stream ended.
Isabella Stone thought she could buy anything, but she learned the hard way that you can't buy dignity, and you certainly can't buy genius. Marcus King didn't just fix an engine that day, he fixed his future. If this story reminded you to know your own worth, even when the world tries to tear you down, do us a favor, smash that like button and subscribe to Black Lives Story. We bring you the vindication you've been waiting for. Have you ever had to walk away from a golden opportunity because the people offering it were toxic? Tell us your story in the comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.